Madam Attorney General, yesterday, Erez Ruveni filed a whistleblower complaint against the Department of Justice. As I think you know, he was a 15-year veteran of the Department of Justice. He received commendations during the first Trump administration for all his work at DOJ, but he filed a detailed account of his recent experience at the Department of Justice, saying that prior to his determination, that he was terminated after he refused to sign an appeal brief that was unsupported by evidence or the law. And he says, "I didn't sign up to lie." In response to his termination, you made a statement on Fox News a little while ago saying, "At my direction, every Department of Justice attorney is required to zealously advocate on behalf of the United States, and that any attorney who fails to abide by this direction will face consequences." So, General Bondi, I guess the direct question is, he says he was fired because he didn't want to make an untruthful statement to a court of law. I have two questions. Number one, I assume you agree that zealous advocacy does not mean telling untruths to courts of law. And second, if that's not the case, what did you mean by saying he was not a zealous advocate?
Senator Van Hollen, this is all pending litigation, as you're well aware, and the timing of it, I can't discuss pending litigation. This is a whistleblower lawsuit pending within my office, but I will say the timing of it I find suspect, as he takes hits at Emil Bovee, who is one of the best human beings I know, one of the smartest, brilliant men I know, who will soon become a federal judge. And his hearing happens to be today, and I find the irony of the timing of it pretty remarkable, the lawsuit. But this had to do with attorney-client privilege information that was disclosed. I can't talk about the substance, but what I will tell you, and you have obviously my word, any zealous advocacy means to be done ethically and honestly, always. And that's what I mean by zealous advocacy. He also accused Emil Bovee of things that Todd Blanche, who is one of the best human beings I also know, my Deputy Attorney General, was in the room and said did not happen. But again, I wish I could get into greater detail. I can't because it's pending. But I stand by Emil Bovee and I stand by Todd Blanche every day, and I always will.
Well, Madam Attorney General, I will say that his account seems to have lots of information. So as you say, this will obviously be something that's litigated or reviewed through due process procedures. But I have to say that it's very, very disturbing. We've also heard from others in other departments who are responsible for implementing the laws of the United States that they feel uncomfortable about having been asked to do things that they thought were unethical. Let me go on to some of the budget questions, and I really want to follow up on my colleagues, Senator Moran and Senator Collins. But the DOJ grant funding is being sort of cut back on two fronts. One, in April, the department terminated hundreds of grant awards, notifying grantees that their current grant funds were gone, effective immediately. That included, law enforcement training grants, technical assistance awards, some dating back to fiscal year, I think, 2017. So question number one is, are you going to be releasing those funds? The second concern regarding grants has to do with the monies that were appropriated in this fiscal year, in March. And my understanding is that DOJ is withholding an overwhelming number of notices of funding opportunities, NOFOs, meaning that grantees who rely on these grants, including many who provide services to victims of crimes, are literally in some cases running out of money. For example, the department's biggest grant-making component, the Office of Justice Programs, has only posted one notice for fiscal year 25, NOFO notice. So if you could answer the question with respect to both those pieces.
Sure, and that's a very valid question, Senator. The notices will be going out in coming weeks about the grants. And we did cut grants by 6%, and I'm here to tell every senator, if we did cut a grant that you care about that is specific to your state, please contact me. I've turned on grants that were cut off. So please, if that happens, there's an appeal process, but you can pick up the phone and you can call me, and I would be more than happy to look at that. I never want to take away a grant that is actually helping Americans, helping victims, helping law enforcement, and we're looking at it on a case-by-case basis, and many of those are being appealed already, but you have my word, we will look at all of those, absolutely.
Thank you. And in terms of the other piece of the question, when the notices for information will go out, because the fiscal year obviously is, running out, and we are hearing from lots of entities that are waiting for those notices so they can apply for the grant funding.
Yeah, yes, Senator. The notice of funding is consistent with our priorities, and they're finalizing it right now. It will be going out very shortly.
Very shortly. All right. Thank you.
It'll be posted on a rolling basis, too, I believe.
Okay. If you could just keep us posted on that. And I would appreciate it, Madam Attorney General, if you could have your team respond to a letter that about 30 senators wrote to you on this topic of the prior fiscal year funds that were frozen.
I will make sure they look at that letter. I think we've received probably thousands of letters.
You've got lots of letters. But we really do need, in order to do our job, to get responses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This exchange is far bigger than one bad memo or one senator scolding. It's a window into how a democratic justice system either protects its integrity or corrodes from the inside. Listen carefully to what's being alleged. A long-serving DOJ attorney says he was asked to sign an appellate brief that he believed was not supported by the facts or the law. He refused, and then he was pushed out. That's not a garden-variety workplace disagreement. It's an accusation that legal judgment was subordinated to something else. When a prosecutor tells a court something that isn't true, the damage ripples outward. It can prejudice a defendant's rights, mislead a judge, distort an appeal, erode public confidence, and expose a whole office to sanctions. That's why professional ethics exist, to stop exactly this. So let's unpack the layers and why each one matters. First, what zealous advocacy does and doesn't mean. Zealous advocacy means you represent your client vigorously. In the DOJ's case, the client is the United States, but always within the boundary of the law and professional responsibility. The moment advocacy requires misstatements of fact or law, it stops being advocacy and becomes misconduct. Lawyers swear an oath to the court. They don't swear an oath to political outcomes. When Bondi says zealous advocacy, she is invoking a principle that sounds robust, but words matter. If zealous becomes shorthand for do whatever it takes to win, the line protecting our courts disappears. Second, the institutional safeguards that should prevent a single bad decision from becoming systemic. The Justice Manual, career review processes, whistleblower protections, independent inspector general inquiries, and congressional oversight. Those are not abstract niceties. They are built precisely so the next person can say no to a politically driven shortcut without being punished. If career attorneys are removed for refusing to bend the facts, then the incentives flip. Future attorneys will either follow improper directions or leave, and the DOJ's institutional memory and competence plummet. That's already being described by former prosecutors who've left. They don't just carry out cases, they carry know-how and credibility. Third, the practical downstream effects everyone should care about right now: frozen grants and halted notices of funding opportunities. Van Hollen pivots to this for a reason. The DOJ isn't only a courtroom institution, it's a funding agency. Grant programs underwrite victim services, community policing training, crime prevention efforts, domestic violence shelters, and technical assistance to local law enforcement. When notices are withheld or awards abruptly canceled, the immediate victims aren't bureaucrats in D.C. They're the survivors, the small rural police departments, the domestic violence counselors who can't pay staff next month. So oversight isn't just about abstract principles, it's also about keeping services alive. Fourth, the legal pathways that should follow from an allegation like this. The whistleblower can pursue remedies through internal channels, through the Inspector General, and eventually through the federal courts. Congress can demand documents, invite the whistleblower to testify, or open its own oversight hearings. The Inspector General's office can initiate an independent review. Each of those steps matters because they create a public record, sworn testimony, document trails, and findings that either corroborate the accusation or expose it as mistaken. Transparency here matters less for theatrical satisfaction and more for restoring confidence. Did DOJ attorneys face improper pressure? Was anyone punished for raising concerns? Were non-lawful briefs ever filed with a court? Fifth, the precedents and consequences. History shows that when prosecutorial offices are politicized, outcomes follow: selective prosecutions, reduced cooperation from career staff, and long-term reputational damage that makes it harder to recruit top talent. The best people leave, the office becomes hollowed out, and institutional competence declines, exactly the scenario critics are warning about. On the other hand, when allegations are thoroughly investigated and remedied, institutions re-establish baseline trust. That's why meaningful, timely, and public oversight is essential. Now, a few practical takeaways for viewers who want to do more than watch the shouting match unfold. If you care about an independent Justice Department and the public services that depend on it, you can act smartly. Ask your senators 2 specific, trackable questions. 1. Will they press for a public inspector general review? And if the IG opens a probe, will they insist on the IG producing a redacted summary of findings? 2. Will they demand a roll call of which DOJ grants were frozen, why they were frozen, and whether any grantees are at risk of closing because of immediate funding gaps? Concrete asks lead to concrete answers. If you or a local nonprofit depend on DOJ grants, document the impact right now. Staff layoffs threatened, services suspended, training canceled. Send those stories with names and numbers to your senator's office. Local stories get attention. Follow the whistleblower litigation docket. Many of these cases move slowly, but court pleadings, motions, and IG reports become public records that clarify facts. Subscribe to the docket or follow reputable legal reporters who track it. Support institutional fixes where they make sense. Strengthen whistleblower protections for DOJ career staff. Require periodic audits of charging memos in high-profile cases. And consider statutory protections that codify the Justice Manual's ban on political considerations in charging decisions. Finally, think about the human dimension. Behind every memo and every grant are people: the lawyer who says, "I didn't sign up to lie," the domestic violence shelter that may close if grant money vanishes, and the voter whose faith in neutrality matters more than party triumphs. Our system survives not because every leader is noble, but because institutions and norms channel conduct toward impartiality. Right now, those norms are under test. Demanding evidence, documentation, and independent review is not partisan theater. It's what keeps the scales of justice balanced. If you want to help right away, call or email your 2 senators and ask them to press for IG transparency into the whistleblower's claims and to get a full accounting of any DOJ grants that were frozen in your state. If a local service you rely on was affected, tell your senator's office how the freeze is harming real people. Transparency and public pressure are the levers that force official answers. And when institutions are forced to answer in public, the facts come out one way or another.